Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I have several videos where I talk about dealing with difficult people or toxic people or how not to get ruffled and so penetrated and affected by others. This is such a difficult thing for so many people, and it makes sense because often we really just don't know where we stand on things. The first thing that I want to tell you is that once you get okay with who you are, which requires you knowing who you are. So, step number one, you have to know who you are. Once you really know who you are, and you get okay with how you feel about things, you are so less affected by what other people think of the same things. Their opinion really does not bear weight with you because you are convicted in how you feel about something because number one, you know yourself and you're okay with yourself. You're comfortable in your own skin unapologetically. Many people struggle with others that project their unsolicited advice or their opinions about things. And it makes sense because if it's unsolicited advice, we didn't ask for their advice. We didn't ask for their opinions. So it definitely can rub us the wrong way. And the more you raise your emotional intelligence and you get to know yourself better and get more comfortable in your skin, who you are unapologetically, the more you will be affected by this, I assure you, but you have to be willing to do the work. And I have so many videos where I talk about people projecting their opinion. In the drop-down box below, as well as on the corresponding blog post, I will have a whole library of videos for you to watch. People always watch these types of videos from me and they say, I want more. Well, I have that. I really do. You just need to resource the library and you need to marathon those videos. How to be thick-skinned, how to build that turtle shell. But the question for today is, when is it okay and appropriate to share our opinion or offer some advice or make a recommendation? Well, recommendations can be a little different than advice because if you're at a restaurant and you have a friend who is looking at the menu and they're so indecisive or undecided about what they would like to order, it's okay to say, may I make a recommendation? I've ate here several times and I know what's really good. But then you may also want to ask the person, do you prefer chicken or are you more of a fish eater or do you like more of a red meat like a steak? Don't assume just because you know what entrees are great at this restaurant that that person is going to have the same taste. I'll give a perfect example. I never ask the wait staff that's serving me what they would recommend because I'm a fish eater. I don't like chicken at all in a restaurant, and I certainly do not like beef. So I always order fish. Well, if my server doesn't like fish, how would they know if the entrees that have a fish source as the protein are going to be good? I may ask the server, what are some of your top ordered fish entrees? Because then the server is going to share with me what most people order if they order a fish. That's just a small example of how we show up, ask questions, communicate, and open up the dialogue with someone. But it's absolutely okay when it's appropriate to make a recommendation. Now, I'll share another time when this could really work for you. Let's say you have a friend and that friend is expecting a baby. They're pregnant and they're not feeling well. And the only thing that they can eat is things like crackers. And this friend has shared this information with you. And a few days later, you're out shopping and you stumble across at the supermarket, the grocery store, some crackers that you really like. It dawned on you once you saw them. And you think, I should let my friend who is not feeling well in this first trimester of her pregnancy, I should share these crackers with her. She may like them. I think I'll text her and send her a picture. That is completely acceptable. In fact, I think that's very generous of you, and it shows that you're thinking of her and thinking about what she is going through during this difficult time in her pregnancy. I wouldn't judge or analyze something like that. Another example where we have to be careful, and this kind of goes back to the food item, is if someone is sharing with you that they're considering, let's say, moving or taking a vacation or traveling to a certain destination, don't just chime in with what your opinion is or what your recommendation is. You're basing an assumption that they have the same interest as you. So if you hear someone say, yes, we're thinking about traveling to Hawaii next year, don't just project and tell them what they should do while they're in Hawaii. Or don't tell them they shouldn't go to Hawaii because maybe you didn't like Hawaii or you had a bad experience. You don't say anything negative about them sharing that they're considering going to Hawaii. Now, let's say you have a lot of experience traveling and vacationing there. You may ask them, may I suggest a couple recommendations of places that we visited? But you still want to find out what their interests are. What do they want to do on their vacation? We can't assume that everyone is a beach person. We can't assume everyone enjoys the mountains. We can't assume everyone enjoys shopping. We can't assume that everyone likes the same restaurants that you do. We're all different. So if you feel inclined, motivated, or inspired to offer your, what we would say, opinion or recommendation, it's always important to ask first. It's courteous. It shows that you have respect for the other person and what their wishes and what their interests are, and it's not all about you. The problem that we have in where our emotional intelligence goes down and the likability of who we are goes down is when we're constantly projecting based off of ourselves. And it's so easy to do. If I had a bad experience, you're going to have a bad experience. If I didn't enjoy traveling to this area, you wouldn't enjoy it. If I don't like this food or this restaurant, you're not going to like it. We have no idea. We are coming from our own lens and we are making assumptions which never project great people skills. Assumptions do anything but hold us back. So we have to be careful, and we have assumptions in our own life as well. So today's video is really for you to understand when to chime in and when not to. And when you do feel encouraged or inspired or motivated to chime in, it's always good to ask about them, and it's always good to ask if they are open to your input. Most of the time, we shouldn't be giving our opinion. When someone is sharing something with you, by nature, because sometimes we don't know what to say, we just spit out whatever comes to our mind. Practicing good awareness and just pausing in the moment and asking yourself, is this person really asking what I think? Let's say someone shared with you that they were thinking about getting an apartment and you didn't really agree with that. Maybe it's an adult child of yours. You have to decide how you're going to handle that, because they could be really excited to share with you that they're making more money in their career and they're ready to get out on their own and they want to start looking at apartments. You know, it's not uncommon for someone to say, well, why don't you look at a home? When someone says we're thinking about looking at apartments, well, why don't you just buy a home? Well, again, you're basing it off of your own experience, your own thoughts. Get some more information from them. Let them share before you chime in. But one of the things you have to listen for is, are they asking my advice? Just because someone tells you something doesn't mean that they're searching for your advice or your opinion. So if you have an adult child who comes home from college and you're thinking they're going to come back and live with you, and they share that they're considering looking at an apartment, and in your mind you may think, you're not really ready for an apartment. You're not making enough money. You haven't found the job that can support that. Let them share a little bit. Find out about them and then see if there's an opportunity where they're seeking your advice. Just because we are adults and we are parents doesn't mean that our adult children always want our unsolicited advice. And this is a big area that I hear about a lot in coaching is my parents, my dad, he just chimes in everything that he thinks. He doesn't even consider what's good for me. And that's unfortunate because that leaves a disconnect in the relationship. And men tend to be fixers by nature. So if you're a man watching this video, be really careful. When someone shares something with you, they're not always looking for you to fix it. They'll let you know. I'm a great communicator. I know when I need something. I know when I want your recommendation or your advice or your opinion. I have no problem asking for that. But I also know when I just want to share. I just want to communicate. I want to tell someone what's going on with me. And often that could be an excitement. So if someone comes back and crushes that or kiboshes that, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when people do that. If you have small children and you share something about your small child with, let's say, a parent or a loved one or a friend or a neighbor, and you're excited that your child reached this milestone and started to do this, and that person comes back and says, well, you should try da 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 da. They're totally missing what you just shared. You're sharing your excitement that your child hit this milestone. So they take that away, which makes the likability of that person go down. If you want to be likable, zip it. Zip it. WAIT. Why am I talking? Keep it in your back pocket with Q-tip. Q-tip, again, quit taking it personally. But we also need to apply weight. Why am I talking? Just because someone is sharing does not give the green light for you to pounce in, give your unsolicited advice or your opinion. They will let you know. Believe me, if you sit back and you pause and you just listen with intent, which is so hard for people to do. We have our subjective listening, we have our objective listening, but you want to be an intuitive listener. Hear what the person is saying. Don't get the wheels spinning before you spit out whatever's on your mind. Let them talk. They're sharing. Give them that space. You will be so much more likable as a person if you do this. And always remember, how do I want people to remember me? When I'm in a conversation with someone and that conversation is going to end because we have to depart, how do I want that person to remember me from that conversation? When I go to a restaurant and I order food, how would I want that server to remember me? When I talk to my children, how do I want them to remember me? What about my spouse? What about my colleagues at work? How do I want them to remember me when I walk away from this conversation? How do I want them to remember me when I walk away from this visit? How do I want them to remember me when I leave this gathering, this baby shower, bridal shower, this wedding? I don't see these people very often, and of course we're going to communicate, but how do I want them to remember me? What are they going to think about me tomorrow, right? But if you're just pushing, projecting, owning the conversation, pushing out your unsolicited advice, your opinions, your recommendations, your likability is going to go down. People aren't going to enjoy your company. So it's really understanding that. But again, it's also understanding when is it acceptable and almost courteous and thoughtful to reach out to someone. If you know someone has been experiencing, let's say, pain in their wrist, and you've experienced that before, you do have to be careful because you may think you can diagnose them and treat them because you've experienced the same thing. Just wait for cues that they're open to your suggestions, your recommendations, or your opinions and advice, because they could just be sharing. They're just sharing, I've been having some pain in my wrist. Oh, that's interesting. What type of pain, or what do you think it's stemming from? Ask some questions like that. And it's okay to maybe say, have you went to your doctor? But when you start saying, you should do this, you should take that, you should apply this, you should buy this, you're basing it off of yourself. It doesn't make you likable. It's hard, I know, but with practice, I assure you, you will reel it in, you'll step back, you won't overstep that boundary, you'll create the boundary for yourself, and I assure you, you will be so much more likable, and that's how people will remember you. They will remember you as someone who listens really well, who listens with intent, who isn't on their phone when I'm talking to them. How do you want to be remembered after every encounter? When you go to the post office and you go up, how do you want to be remembered by that person? How do you want to be remembered when you open the door and FedEx or UPS is there and they hand you a package? How do you want that person to remember you? Yeah, something to think about. Like I always say, leave people better than you found them. If you want to be likable, leave people better than you found them. Be careful when you're offering your opinions, your recommendations, and your advice. And don't get tripped up when other people do it. They're basing it off of themselves. I talked recently in a video where I talked about dealing with difficult people. This is really a piggyback off of that. So QTIP, quit taking it personally. WAIT, why am I talking? 2 acronyms to keep in your back pocket. All right, thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon right here on YouTube. Take care.